In today's video, we are going to talk about 15 must-know document object model JavaScript manipulation methods. Myself Mohammad Zubair, and this channel is all about showing you how to become a highly paid IT pro really fast. So without any further ado, let's get started. Well, if you are a newbie or even if you are an expert of JavaScript, you must have heard the term document object model. Well, as a developer, when you work on projects, you will be using some frameworks or you will be building some script from scratch for your projects with pure JavaScript. Well, there are some essential document object manipulation methods that you should know. So I'll talk about 15 such methods. Number 1, createElement. Well, the createElement method creates a new HTML element within your document object model, and then it returns newly created element as its value. So here I'll show you that how it looks like to create a paragraph and how it looks like to create a new div element. So first of all, let's create a paragraph. So I will just write here, let p equals document dot create element, and in that I will have p in here. So we have successfully created an element for our paragraph. I'll do the same for my div. So I will just copy it and I will paste it. In that I will write here div as a string and I will have div as my variable. So this is how you can create different elements using createElement method. Number 2, createTextNode. Well, as we have seen that how we can create element, the createTextNode method creates a new text node for you. This method can be used to escape some of the HTML characters. So this is an example, and here we have 3 parts. First of all, we have syntax. Syntax is let as equals document dot create element. Then we have a text, which is a text node, and then we have a data, which is do you love JavaScript. Well, basically data is string that contains the content that we want to put in the text node, and this is the example of that method. So this is how you can create your createTextNode method and you can use it. And now let's move on to the next one. Number 3, Node.textContent. Well, the text content property of a node can be used to retrieve or write text inside a particular node. Text content gets the content of all the elements, and it also includes the scripts and styles element of your JavaScript. So this is my div, and after that this is the text that I want to include into my div, and I'm using text content method, and with the help of that this string now will be added into my div, and this is how you can use it. Number 4, HTMLElement.innerText. Well, HTMLElement.innerText is a property that represents the rendered text content of a particular node and its descendants as well. So I'll show you its example here. This is how it looks like. Only difference is we are using different property in here. Earlier we were using text content, now we are using inner text. Well, HTMLElement.innerText returns the text content that is displayed on the screen, and as this is the one that is being displayed on the screen, this will be the part of my HTMLElement.innerText. Number 5, append. Well, as the name suggests, append means we are adding or we are inserting something. Well, append method inserts a set of elements or text after the last child of the element in your program. So I'll have an example in here. First of all, I'll create a div and then I will have some text and I will append it to the body of my program. So basically, first of all, we have our body and we are assigning it. After that, we have our div, and in div, we are adding some of the text. And at the end, we are appending our div into the body of our program. Now let's have some other things to understand it in a better way. So basically now, other than my div, now I also have my paragraph. And if you see here, now I'm appending the text from my paragraph as well, as I'm using p.textContent. So now from my div and from my paragraph, both of these texts will be added, and at the end I'm appending both of them using my body. And now these are part of my body in my program as well. So this is how you can use your append method. So as you have an idea that how to use append method, the number 6th method is called appendChild. The appendChild method adds a new node after the last child of a specified parent node in your program. I'll show you an example, and in that I'll have a div and I will have a text that I will append to the body. So basically here, first of all, we have our body and then we are creating our div. And after our div, we have our some text that we are adding into our div. And at the end, we are appending our div to the body using appendChild method. So this is how you can use your appendChild. And as I have used my div in here, you can create your paragraph in here or other element of JavaScript, and you can append those into your body as well. You just have to declare them and you just have to call them. So let's say I have constant p is equal to document.createElement, and after that I just have to call its variable that will be p. And with the help of that, we'll be able to use our appendChild method with as many elements as we want. Now let's move ahead and now let's see that how we can remove a particular child. Number 7, removeChild. Well, the removeChild method removes a particular child node from the document object model and then it returns the removed node. So here in my HTML, I am having some of the divs. First of all, I am using a class and the class is animals, and then I am using 2 more divs, and in those 2 divs, I am using some IDs like big and small. And now I'll show you that how you can remove a particular div from your parent div. This is the parent div and these are the child div. So I'll remove the big div from my animal div. So here it is, and first of all we are getting the div element using this ID. If you see, this is the ID and here we have the ID. After that we are removing the child node from the document object model using if method. And in that we are checking if it is available, and if it is, then we are removing it. So this is how you can remove a particular child from your parent node or from your element as well. Number 8, Node.insertBefore. Well, the insertBefore method helps you to insert a particular node at a particular child of some specified parent node before the reference node. I'll show you an example so that you can understand it in a better way. Let's say this is the HTML that I have, and now I'll use insertBefore method to insert a heading which is h1 before the first child of the parent element. So these are some of my divs. So here I'll be using them to insert a heading. So here first of all, I'm getting the parent div with the getElementById method, and the name of that is parent element, which is right here. Then I'm creating an h1 element with createElement method, which is right here. And after that, I'm inserting text into created h1 heading, and this is the h1 heading and I'm adding text into that one. After that, at the end, I'm inserting the h1 element before the first child of the parent element. And if you see here, we are adding h1 into the parent's element before the first child. So this is how you can use your appendBefore method in your document object model using your JavaScript. Number 9, insertAdjacentHTML. Well, the insertAdjacentHTML methods of the element interface parses the specified text as HTML or XML, and then it inserts it into the resulting node into the document object model tree at a specified position as per your liking. Well, we have 5 positions available. First of all, we have before begin. Basically, it used for before the element itself. After that, we have after begin, and as the name suggests, it gets used just inside the element before its first child. Then we have before end, and this gets used just inside the element after its last child. After that, we have before begin, and as the name suggests, it gets used just inside the element before its first child. And after that, at the end, we have after end position, and it gets used after the element itself. You should use the Node.textContent property or the Element.insertAdjacentHTML method. So try to avoid insertAdjacentHTML method as much as you can. Number 10. innerHTML. Well, the element property, that is innerHTML, it retrieves and writes HTML or XML markup contained within a particular element. Now I'll show you its example. So this is my list, and in my list I'm using some href. In that I have my name, my fname, my contact. Now I'll use innerHTML property to get the content of the UL element, which is right here. So here first of all, I'm selecting the UL element by its ID, which is list, from the document object model with the getElementById method. After that, I am getting the HTML content of the UL element with the innerHTML property. Here it is. So this is how you can use your innerHTML property in your document object model in your JavaScript. Number 11. setAttribute. Well, if you have worked on Java, you might have an idea that how to use set and get method. Well, the setAttribute method in JavaScript sets an attribute on a specified element in your document object model. Here I will use HTML and I'll show you an example of it. So this is my HTML, and in that I have a title which is data attribute, and then its body, and in that body I am using a div, and the ID of my div is data. Now I'll use setAttribute element, and here with the help of my getElementById I'm getting my div, and in my div I'm using the ID of my div, which is data, which is right here. And then I'm setting the attribute of name as my John. So this is how you can use setAttribute property in your document object model in your JavaScript. Number 12. getAttribute. Well, as we have seen that how to use setAttribute, well, getAttribute method of the element interface, it returns the value of a specified attribute on the element. setAttribute was getting used to set a particular value. Now getAttribute will return it. Let's suppose we have the same HTML as earlier in here, and now I'll use getAttribute to get the value of the attribute ID of the div. So the ID is data, so let's retrieve its value. So here first of all, we are getting the element by its ID, which is data, which is right here, and then we are getting the attribute of it, and basically we are getting the title. Number 13. Element.classList. Well, the class list is a property of an element that helps you to hold the class name of the element that is currently selected. The class list property also returns an array of the classes on the selected element that you have in your program. Let's suppose we have this example in here. In that we have a div, and the ID of div is navigation, and then we have some href which are references or links, and we have home, about, and search. You can select the navigation div by its ID with the getElementById method, and you can fetch the class's name of those elements using the either class name or class list property. But the class name property returns the class names as a string, while the class list property will return the class name as an array. And one thing is very important in here, and that is element.classList property is only a read only. So if you want to manipulate the HTML elements classes, you will have to use some of the methods that come with class list property. We have methods like add, and then we have contains, and after that we have remove, then we have replace, and at the end we have one more method that is called as toggle. Well, basically the classList.add method allows you to add at least one class name to your element, and it will omit all those are already available in here. Well, the classList.contains method checks the element's class attribute if it contains the specified class name or not. The classList.remove method helps you and allows you to remove one or more class names from an HTML element, and the toggle method allows you to add or remove a class name based on the current class value of the element. Replace method, as the name suggests, replaces the elements in your class. Number 14. Element.dataset. Well, the element.dataset property provides and helps you with the ability to read and write access to custom data attributes on your elements. Let's suppose we have this HTML, and now let's get the div by its ID, and then let's add two datasets into it. So here first of all we are getting the ID of our div using getElement.by_id, and then we are adding these two datasets into our div. So here it is user.dataset.id equal to 1234, and the name will be John Doe. So this is how you can use your element.dataset property. Number 15, remove. Well, as the name suggests, the element.remove method removes the element from the document object model. For understanding it in a better way, let's have an HTML in here. Let's say we have this HTML, and in that we have our title, which is data attribute, then we have our body. In our body we are using two div. First one is with the ID big and second one is with the ID small. And now I will show you that how you can remove a particular element with the ID. Let's say I want to remove the element with the ID of small. So here first of all we are getting the element that we want to remove from our document object model with the help of getElement.by_id method. And then we are calling our remove method to remove a particular element. So basically we are calling small, and this is the ID of this div, and then with the help of this constant we are removing this one, and now your this div with the element of small will get removed from your program. So how cool and how easy it is. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope now you have a better idea that what those 15 document object model methods are that you must know. If that is the case, please leave a like, subscribe and press the bell icon. We'll get back to you in the next video. Till then, take care.